Are you afraid to learn about near-death experiences? Are you scared to discover things about the afterlife? A lot of times people ask me about what happens in near-death experiences. So I say, oh, just go to YouTube, type in near-death experiences, and just watch some of them. So they do. And usually what happens, though, is they find the most sensational ones. The ones that have titles like, Man Dies, Goes to Hell, Meet Satan. And those are the ones that just freak them out, and so they quit the whole thing altogether and they never look again. And what's unfortunate is those are the false ones. Those are fake. Majority of those with those really sensational titles are just for, that get promoted on YouTube because of the title. They end up becoming barriers for people learning about this. So I would encourage you to just ignore those that are very sensational, have a lot of hits, and I will have a playlist posted on my channel that'll actually show you all the good ones. Not all of them, but the ones that I personally find very interesting and very helpful. So those are the ones you could watch. Other people have made lists of the good ones as well. So just know that if you see an NDE that's freaking you out, it's probably false. It's not true. But the ones that are good, that have excellent honest recounting of people's experiences in the afterlife when they've come back to tell us about it. Those have a hallmark. There are certain thumbprints that are very true for everybody that's had a true NDE. And I will cover that in the next video where you can actually hear what are those identifiers, so you can tell yourself if you're listening to a good NDE or one that is just made up. Because people like to get popularity on YouTube, and so they post very sensational stories that are just made up. So don't pay attention to those. I personally had some fears when I first started reading these because I wanted to know, what's the afterlife going to be like? Am I going to be in trouble? How's God going to judge me? And are there any surprises that I don't know about? And what if he's unpredictable? Is he going to be vengeful or punitive? Am I going to be in trouble? It's those kind of things that people are oftentimes afraid of when they're learning about the afterlife. And I want to reassure you that there's nothing to be afraid of. God is loving. He's always loving. He is not angry. He is not punitive. There are no surprises. It's all actually very predictable. And I'll cover what those things are later. So just know that you don't have to be afraid of people's sensational stories, and those fears of what you might meet aren't true. It's going to be, there are some things you do need to pay attention to, mainly how are you treating others, because that's what you're going to be asked, or shown actually. They show you how you've treated others. And then you get to determine within yourself whether or not that was something that was beneficial or harmful. One of the things that I find interesting is near-death experiencers themselves, when they're actually in the next life, are told by Jesus and any of their angels or people who are showing them the afterlife, go back, tell people about it. I want them, you have a message now. This message needs to be told. Don't hide it. Don't be quiet about it. This is your purpose, your destiny. And so they come back very hungry and interested in telling people, but they're aware that other people are scared. And so they oftentimes themselves, people who have had these experiences, aren't able to share them because others around them are really frightened and they shut them down. There's even a few people who have actually been locked up because they started sharing and people didn't know what to do with it, and they ended up getting treatment for a psychological issue. But that was only one, and I just heard that one last night. So the majority of them, though, after processing their what they saw and what they heard and what happened to them for years, usually 5 years, sometimes 7, 10 years, then they start actually going public with it. So when they start talking online and sharing their testimony, it usually happened 10 years ago. But it took them that long to get the courage up and the nerve up to actually bring out what happened to them so the rest of us could benefit from it. One of the things that I wanted to share was these testimonies. We have about 10,000 of them that are filmed. They were filmed across decades, going back to the first cameras. People whipped out their camera and took a picture of grandma telling about her near-death experience. They didn't even know what this was back in the 40s or the 50s. But somebody now found those tapes and they uploaded Grandma's testimony online. And so we've now got about 10,000 of really good YouTube videos of testimonies of near-death experiences, many of which I've watched. I've seen about 4,000 of them. There's another 50,000 or so total where researchers have actually documented what happened, and they've actually recorded the information, the testimony, the interview from one first-person interview accounts, and then they did their PhD project on it, or they've studied it or wrote a book on it. And so we know there's a lot of people out there that have actually told us what their near-death experiences are, spanning decades, spanning cultures, spanning non-English speaking countries. You can see their YouTube videos. You can just read the captions, the English captions, and understand what was said. Some of those are very profound. So just know that these are many various forms of information coming from testimonies spanning the globe, across cultures and across decades. What's interesting is only now can these people find each other, because we can all find each other on YouTube. In the past, nobody knew who else was writing about this or even talking. Most of them were the only people that they knew of, or anybody knew of back then, that had an experience like this. And so that even adds validity to the phenomenon, because these are people that didn't know what anybody else was writing about. Now when you get them all together, you can see remarkable consistency and remarkable patterns that are just like, this is a very true phenomenon that is validated over multiple decades. Okay, the one thing I wanted to point out is God is still making saints today. He didn't quit making saints in the Old Testament or the New Testament. Only those people are worthy of having a book in the Bible written about their life. You may have a life worth writing a Bible book, a book in the Bible about. I know a lot of people in some of the circles I've traveled in that have had amazing stories of, where they used to be and where God's brought them to now, to the point of where they need to tell their story. This is really good testimonies of what God does today. So I find it troubling when people say, oh, we can't believe these near-death experiences because the only ones that are valid are what people lived in the Old Testament or the New Testament. And I would like to say that anybody that's gone through a spiritual growth process where they've learned what to do and what not to do, and discovered truths about God or how the kingdom works or what really matters in life, those are valid. And so near-death experiences is a great way for people to actually grow and change, and now they have a testimony that tells you what God's done in their life too. So in no way would I say that we should be limiting ourselves just to what's written in the Bible. What you'll discover is these people's stories after they come back from the NDE is very much a Bible story. It's very much like, this is who I was, this is who I am now, this is what I've learned. I wanted to point out a verse found in 1 Corinthians 2, 6 through 13. There's some really good concepts in there about God wanting us to know, wanting us to learn about near-death experiences. Not just near-death experiences, but how we understand, well, it does actually have a near-death experience right there in verse 9. It says, things which the eye has not seen, and which the ear has not heard, and which hasn't even entered into the heart of man, this is what God has prepared for those who love him. And then God has revealed them to us through his Spirit. It says earlier in the same passage that these are for our glory. It goes on to say that now that we have received his Spirit, these aren't things that you can learn from the world or from men who are in the world. These are only things you can learn from the Spirit who is from God. That these are things that are freely given to us by God. And that's the key phrase I want you to hear, is freely given to us. That's verse 12, 1 Corinthians 2:12. These things we now speak, not with words taught by human wisdom, but these are words taught by the Spirit. We combine spiritual thoughts with spiritual words. The reason why that's important is because these are not normal ways of understanding the world. when we study near-death experiences, you have to move your brain to a much higher level of understanding. And it takes years to actually understand what's going on. Fortunately, there's been people out there that have studied this phenomenon for 50 plus years. They've put a lot more hours into this than I have. And they have a lot of really good insights that kind of tie everything together. I've benefited from watching those, so it saved me a few years. I've been studying this for 4 years. And what you end up discovering is that there really is information here freely given to us by God. He wants us to know. Like I said, Jesus oftentimes sends them back and says, make sure you tell everybody what you saw and heard up here. So that's why I think it's important that we listen to their testimonies. And to conclude this, I want to say that, let me reassure you, these stories are in perfect agreement with the scripture. In fact, it broadens my understanding of what the Bible's actually saying, and it clears up certain beliefs that I've been taught maybe incorrectly, or belief systems that were just askewed, or they needed to be tweaked a little bit. But these NDEs and the stories they tell us of the afterlife are indeed in perfect agreement with the scriptures. So I really would want to encourage you who are bibliophiles, people that love the word, that you're not going to run into stuff that's like outside of, you know, what's in the Bible. In fact, it'll help you understand, oh, that's what that verse meant. Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. Wow, look at that. It's all over the place. It's in perfect agreement, which has been my experience. One thing you might have to deal with, though, is what you've been taught, oftentimes wisdom of man, may be far different than what you would learn in near-death experiences. And so there's a big difference in beliefs. People think, oh, a belief is a belief is a belief. Well, they're not. There are dark beliefs that don't really profit any, and then there are those that create love, and those that create connection, and those that create life. And there's a big difference between those. Beliefs, you have to be really careful because your beliefs will be challenged. And because there's some things that just don't fit in the near-death videos. When you actually listen to them, they're like, wow, that's not even in there. That doesn't even exist up there. Well, I'll get to those belief systems later. The last thing I was going to say is, and listen to this if you hear anything from this video. People go up into the light and they're drawn up through this tunnel. And in this tunnel, they are expanding and they grow and they start having knowledge and wisdom and they're having insight added to them. And so this whole experience of leaving from the blackness of the earth in the afterlife to up the tunnel to seeing the being of light, they are added to, they just grow. It's like they expand into this full spiritual being that they always were, but it was like hidden when they were down here. And they gain in knowledge and wisdom, and they just become, and love, and they experience emotions that they never experienced before. And what's interesting is when they're sent back down that tunnel, things are shed, things are taken off, and they go back into the amnesia that they originally had when they were on the earth. But what's interesting is they all say the same thing. When I understood everything, when all answers that I asked, when I got up there, when I got the answers, I remember knowing they were perfect answers, that they were good, that they were true, that there was nothing wrong with the way God set up the system, that everything is as it should be. They all say this. They all say this to a one. There isn't a single good near-death experiencer that came back and said, I was unsatisfied with the answers to my most troubling questions. And they all ask the same questions. Why is there evil in the world? How can a good, loving God allow people to suffer? What was the point of this or that death or this loss in my life or this tragedy? And God answers those questions. You get to ask those questions. And those questions are given, the answers are given to them. And when they return, they remember thinking, wow, I understand. I get it. That was a perfect answer. And they don't remember exactly what the answer is. That's what's kind of funny. They try and relay as much information as they can. But oftentimes they remember, they will remember what they asked. They'll remember some of the answers. They'll remember what their answers to specific questions were. But big questions like purpose of evil and suffering, they will come back and they will say, I remember the answer all made sense, that it was perfect, that it was exactly as it should be. They say that all of them say the same thing. So that is reassuring to me that it does make sense. Right now our minds can't totally comprehend it. It's going to come to us when we have that knowledge revealed to us and we can see everything in full. But right now we've been given a dim view of what's going on, and that would mirror 1 Corinthians 13, where it says we see dimly, as if in a mirror. Okay, that was all I wanted to share with you today, and let you know that you can be open to these truths. You don't have to be afraid of them. Near-death experiences can bless your life. They've blessed many others. There is no reason to think that, oh my goodness, I'm going to discover something that is like awful. No, there's actually good content here that could really benefit you spiritually. At least that has me. It takes a lot of hours of study, though, to understand them. That's why I made these videos, to kind of give you the Cliff Notes version so you can get to the beneficial truths quickly and not get lost in all the some of the bad videos or ones that go on and on and on, because there's tons of content out there. Okay, hopefully this was helpful to you and that you now are confident that NDEs and the testimonies that people have to tell us are nothing to be afraid of. Okay, bye.